making a 9-foot tall, height adjustable, detachable, Whitebeard's Murakumogiri Naginata. Man, that was a mouthful. And here's how I did it. What is Blazing Dragon Ninjas? First, I'm gonna start off with all the materials you need to use. You'll need the cardboard rolls from stuff like aluminum foil. The rolls I'm using are an extra large size. Just the thicker rolls that have more cardboard on it compared to like paper towel rolls. Those ones are really flimsy. And obviously you'll need cardboard. For you to be able to attach and detach each segment, I used the size 3/4 hexagonal nut and obviously a bolt to go with it. I picked that size because it's not too heavy or too light. Obviously, I'm not perfect at this, so if you have a better choice for a nut and bolt to use, then by all means go ahead and use that. For the height of 9 feet, you'll only need about 4 for each, the nuts and bolts. You'll also need a white fabric or spandex for the bottom of the naginata. And the final two things are resin and JB Weld. I'll put it up on the screen if you don't know what it is. And as much as I want to say it's optional, you'll need it. You'll need it bad. Trust me. I'll also throw it as a link in the description below. That's about all for the materials you'll need. Now it's on to the application. First things first, to get a circular piece of cardboard with a diameter of the interior of the cardboard roll. You'll then want to cut a hole big enough for the bolt to fit. Right before you super glue the piece of cardboard into place, you want it to be deep enough to where the nut isn't protruding or going too far in. It should look like this in a side profile. Now, for the application, certain parts of the handle do require certain amounts of strength when it comes to gluing, because I use contact cement and hot glue for every segment at first, and let me tell you, that was not a good idea. You would think something called contact cement would be strong enough. It completely ripped apart. So that's why you need JB Weld. And it's not required for every single segment, especially for the bolts. You don't really need it for that. I'm pretty sure contact cement and super glue and hot glue should get the job done. But for certain parts of the hexagonal nuts, you do need JB Weld, like the middle segment need it. Also, an important note to add is that the hexagonal nuts, you do need them to be centered. If they're not centered, they will spin and be really crooked, and you don't want that. It wouldn't look like it's all in one piece and segmented. So if you want to kind of try and counteract that, you can try and get maybe like any type of spacer, so any type of thing that can fit in between, just put it in between each corner, and then that's how you can figure out how it's spaced. I didn't really use it, so I don't really have a good idea for it. Now, to install the bolt, it's relatively similar to what we did previously. The only difference is you don't have to poke a hole in the middle, but you will have to poke a hole later, and that's for the next segment after this one. You want to push the flat piece of cardboard down low enough to where when you put the bolt in, only the grooves show. You'll then want to fix the bolt in with any strong adhesive to keep it in place. And so far, my experience with contact cement and hot glue, it's been a week now and there's been no damage. You also want to make sure the bolts are put on straight and not slanted or tilted. The next part should be able to help. Now, this is the exact same process as installing the hexagonal nuts. You know, the circle the hole, cut it, blah, 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 all that. Yeah, so it's that, but now you just put it at the top, right where the bolt is, and you seal it that way. Now, I believe doing this process with the cardboard donut hole in the middle should show you whether or not you've put your bolt in the center of the roll. Now, starting off, I originally painted this the dark red color that Whitebeard used when he was old. For those who want to make the dark red handle, you simply just need red and some black. Obviously a lot less black, because for the spiral area, that's going to use a lot more black. And that's one done, and I'll just repeat that for the other three. Alright, now onto the resin pour. I used 30-minute epoxy resin and a 24-hour epoxy resin. The difference between the two is that when you use a 30-minute resin, it actually sticks on and is thicker, and you won't have to apply multiple coats. If you use the regular 24-hour one, you'll have to do multiple coats because some parts of the handle don't keep the resin on it for some reason, so you'll have to do multiple coats. I'm currently using the 24-hour resin, but this one has a 40-minute work time, so it basically hardens in like 40 minutes. but it's not really completely cured within that time frame. Now I'll just use a brush to apply it on. So now I'm cutting another circle, but this one's going to be at the bottom. I thought of using this cotton ball idea, but I ended up abandoning it because I just didn't feel like it made sense. Now applying that fabric at the bottom, I just simply pulled in, tugged it as much as I could, and then after I wrapped it around with a rope, I painted. I should have applied the rope a bit higher up because the fabric tends to fall back down. I just sanded down the parts where they connected a little bit because it looked really rough. Here's how it looks. I think you would get what I mean when I say I want to put the rope higher. Throughout this whole process, I wish I just used hot glue. The hot glue doesn't leave a mark and the super glue does, and it doesn't look that good. So I'm just advising it to you that you should use it. I would also advise that you add a whole bunch of hot glue to the bottom. If you do that, it should protect it from weather, grime, and other things. Okay, so now for the spiral. This is very simple. All you need is just painter's tape, and you're gonna wrap that all the way around. You can also wrap it again for the spiral to have a different size. After applying the super dark red color, you're gonna wanna take off the painter's tape. Now this should be super satisfying. Unless this happens to you and you get stuck at a part, way to ruin it. The person requesting Whitebeard's Naginata wanted the prime Whitebeard colors, so I sanded the handle and began painting. The blade's dimensions I have for the bottom are 6.5 inches, and the whole blade entirely is about 2 feet, but I would recommend 3 feet. As you can see, I'm redoing the attempt again. I'm simply just using 2 straight lines, and then I'll add the curve. Time to cut it out with some quick magic. And to duplicate it, boom! Looking nice, looking nice. I'm now working on, I guess, what you would call the collar of the blade. The dimensions for this is about 9 inches by 3 inches. Now I'm going to assemble the 2 pieces of the blade with resin. Just going to give it a good old mix. And now I'll apply it onto the blade. Now I'm going to attach the other part of the blade on top of it, just to sandwich it in between the resin. I should have added a bit more resin though. Now I'm attaching that collar part to the blade, and I just use tacky glue and super glue. Here's how the blade's looking like currently, in all angles and dimensions you can see. For the collar, I used 2 pieces of corrugated cardboard, as you can see. You'll see why I did that. I'm now working on, I guess, what you would call the guard of the blade. Like, I'm not even sure what you would call it. Besides from that, I'm now putting this piece in between the 2 parts of the collar. As I mentioned previously, with the 2 pieces of corrugated cardboard, you want to open one up and slide this piece in between. Just let me cook, you'll see what this means in the future. Trust me. Here's the side profile for those who don't understand. This is how it should look like. I'm now cutting out the shape similar to the shape of the guard already, but just smaller. The top will be 12.5 centimeters, the bottom being 6 centimeters, and the side being 19 centimeters. Time for a precision point cutout. I got a separate piece of cardboard and I made this like snake or crocodile design, whatever he has on that part of the guard. After I drew it, I was thinking of ending it right there, but I later thought of the idea that I should give it more of a 3-dimensional look. So I got my X-Acto knife and I scored it throughout the lines. So I began. I did a whole bunch of scoring on both of these crocodile things. Being done scoring, now just left me to cut it out. Here's both done. I will have you note that the placement direction they both face is towards the back of the blade, the blunt side. For example, if the sharp side of the blade is facing left, this thing is facing right, and vice versa. And now it's glued on. And for the sides of the guard, it should be relatively simple. You just trace it out off a piece of cardboard. Moving on to the part that attaches on the handle, its dimensions are about 3.5 inches for the height. I used super glue and hot glue to apply this on. I got a thin strip of cardboard, about 1.5 inches, and wrapped it around the bottom of the guard. I attached another piece that's about 2.5 inches, and the piece I'm attaching now is about 3. So I cut out 2 rectangular pieces of cardboard and I'm going to apply that onto the blade. The width I can tell you is about 2.5 inches, but the length kind of varies because that's going to go all the way into the guard. I'll start that by adding glue to the open area where I can put the cardboard in. After completing that, I'm now going to work on the design. I'm now going to get another rectangular piece, and this will be to add a bit more dimension towards the part that's on the blade. These dimensions are 8 inches by 2.5 inches. When cutting out the piece of cardboard to make this frame, you want the border to be at least 1 centimeter thick. Also, might I add that I did score each line on the cardboard again for that dimensional look. I'm saying dimensions a lot, aren't I? And now for the big nails that protrude out of the handle. I'm sure this holds the blade, but I'm gonna just put circles that will just pop out. When doing this, just be sure to find a decently thick corrugated cardboard. So, the plan to do this is to have 2 parallel lines with a spacing of 1 inch below and 1 inch above. I then will plot about 1.5 inches from the perimeter of each circle. Now after completing that, the only problem you would encounter is to replicate that on the other side. You can do the eyeball test or the finger test by putting 2 of your fingers on both sides to see where they line up, but that's still a bit hard. Now for these circles, I didn't use a reference to trace out, but the diameter was about 1.5 centimeters. Now after making my first circle, gotta duplicate that 7 more times, and that should do the job. It's time to super glue. Yeah, I'm just super gluing everything.
Embarrassing!
Please forget what I just did, and let's just move on to installing the hexagonal nut. Again, like we've done 4 times already, you have to cut out a circle. Now again, we're gonna put a hole in the middle, and this time we're gonna glue it a lot farther down than we normally do. We're doing this because we want the handle to screw in deeper. I'm now mixing the JB Weld together, like yin yang. I believe that's how you say it. When I was mixing JB Weld at first, I didn't know when to stop because I thought you had to mix it for a certain time frame, but it just says to mix it until it becomes like a uniform gray. There shouldn't be any light or dark spots. Now to put it onto the blade. Not gonna lie, you might need a Dremel unless you're a perfect being that can just put this on without any problems. Then by all means, you don't need a Dremel, but you might need a rotary tool because the JB Weld will block up the entryway for where the bolt fits through, and it might also touch the grooves of the hexagonal nut, which will not let the bolt screw through. Also, Dremel is the brand name. I'm just kind of mixing it up with the actual thing. It's called a rotary tool. You know that happens for a few things, for example, like Vaseline or whatnot. Now I'm using the steel stick epoxy putty. Be sure to be safe and wear gloves, but you also strain your fingers while doing this. I put it into a really long roll and then I applied it on. It's now time to resinate the blade. Simply mixing equal parts of resin and I'll apply that all over the blade. Again, the rotary tool might come in very handy here because all the scores I've made in all those detailed spots, they're gonna get covered by the resin and you're gonna need a rotary tool to carve them out again. Now after completely covering the blade in resin, I'm now going over with a complete white base coat. Let's give this blade its actual colors. First, I'm going to use pure gold and paint along the part that goes on the blade. Don't paint the borders in pure gold, because that's going to use a different gold color. Also, here's a picture of how pure gold looks like. I'll also put this as a link in the description below. Now here's another segment you want to paint in pure gold. Me saying paint this in pure gold doesn't sound like I'm talking about a color. Now for this part, by the end of the guard, you're going to want to use Inca Gold mixed with white. This is going to need a lot of coats, just letting you know. Check out these new compy angles. You already know we're going to get up close and personal. Check out the paint on surface contact, the way it glides through. Yup, you see this? Pre 1,000 subscribers? High key. So right now I'm going over the blade with a black. I didn't really have to explain that, did I? Hey, here's another pleasant viewing angle. I'm not gonna lie, these are getting good. Before we continue, I made a critical error and forgot to record the part where I painted this Inca Gold with white. Also, the border around the collar was painted with the Inca Gold and white mix. Anyway, let's continue. So for this blade to look more metallic, I'm gonna go over with like a glitter glue or like glitter paint. It's basically gonna give it like sparkles, which I think metals do have, and that should give it more of a real blade look, I guess. The edge of the blade, I didn't really change much. All I did was add a white and like a tint of a metallic gray. That's it. It's assembly time. Now this is gonna be super satisfying once it all works. There goes 1.
Yes!
And 2.
Yes!
3.
yeah!
And 4. What? Come on. It broke. Yeah, it's not turning. Yeah, I'll go fix that really quick. Of course this happens when I'm steps away from victory. Okay, the fixes shouldn't be this hard. I just need a little bit of this. No, that, mix. And apply it on. Alright, that should be good. 1,000 subscribers! 1,000 subscribers is real! Can we get much lower? So low. Can we get much lower? So low. I hope you guys enjoyed that little stupid segment. Be sure to burn the like and subscribe button. And later, Dragon Ninjas.